Hey everyone, I'm TM Sparrow, writer and homeschooling mom, and today I'm going to show you how I use Novel Factory to plan my books. As you can see today, I'm actually going to show you the way that I use Novel Factory. So this video is actually a special request from one of my critique partners over on Discord. He asked if I would show you guys how I use Novel Factory to actually plan my novels. So you can see when you start it up, you can start a new novel or open one you've already had saved. But I'm going to continue from my last save because I've actually set up a special story to use to show you guys how this works. So when you open Novel Factory, this page is going to be the first one you see when you're just starting out. This is where you start your planning. And you can see here's their roadmap, which is actually a super helpful checklist, even though I don't actually use all of their steps. When I start with Novel Factory, I usually already have my idea. And they start you with your premise, which is actually really cool because you break your story down to the very simplest elements. And one of the things that I like is they have a lot of help for you if you don't understand what you're doing. It tells you, every story should contain all of the 5 major story elements, which are character, situation, objective, opponent, and disaster. It tells you a little bit about each one, and you can go through and you can read all of that, which was very helpful the first time I was using it. And then it even has examples. So I have this set up as a short story that I would be working on. And since I had the song Bitsy Bitsy Spider stuck in my head when I was trying to come up with my idea, that's the story I'm going to be telling. So my character is the itsy bitsy spider. He lives in the garden and he wants to climb the water spout. But a storm is coming and he could be washed out and drowned. So my premise is, tired of living in the garden, can the itsy bitsy spider climb up the water spout to a new life before the storm arrives and drowns him with rain? After you do your premise, usually I'm coming up with my character ideas afterwards, although sometimes I do my skeleton first, which is what I did when I was planning this. So the skeleton is a very basic outline. And you can see down here, I can't change my template because it will erase everything that I've added in here, but they have a variety of different templates from the hero's journey, mysteries, romance, short stories, and you can even make your own custom templates to suit your writing style. So I just used their basic short story template. So I have a character and a situation with a problem for Act 1. So Act 1 is going to be my introductions. You write one sentence for each one. So Itsy Bitsy is a garden spider. He's tired of living in the garden where he almost gets stepped on and the people are starting to use pesticides. His problem, Itsy Bitsy wants to leave the garden by climbing the water spout that is rumored to lead to a better life, but it is dangerous with a storm coming that could wash him out and drown him. Act 2 is where they try to solve their problem, but fail, making it worse, and then make a final attempt which may succeed or fail. Itsy Bitsy leaves his web to travel to the water spout, taking his wife, Mrs. Bitsy, with him. But he hesitates, overwhelmed by fear, and they leave too late. They are washed out by the storm, and Mrs. Bitsy is drowned. Obviously, this is a tragic tale. So alone, with nothing left to lose, Itsy Bitsy makes the journey through the water spout. And then you have your third act, because this is a 3-act structure, but you can add more acts as you need, or delete acts even. So the consequence is not as expected. The water spout leads to a bigger world, but it is even more crowded with people than the small garden. That's my skeleton, my very basic outline of what's going to happen in the story. So what I really love about this is actually the character pages, because they are very in-depth. And you can see I have Itsy, and then his wife is Eatsy. It'll show you a picture that you have put on here, their name, and some other information that you have filled out about them. I love this. You pick your display name, what type, protagonist, antagonist, sidekick, mentor, love interest, and a lot of other things you can choose from. All this information you can put on here about them: first name, last name, nicknames, profession, gender, age, hair, eyes, nationality. Well, it's really great. And they will tell you when you look through here, they start you doing the introductions. It takes you through different ways of introducing your character and to really get into the details of their character. So either later on, if you follow their map, or if you do it like I do, you can just do this all right away, because I really like to have a good understanding of my characters before I start expanding the plot of my story, because my plots are usually very character driven. So you have a ton of information you can fill out in this characterization section. You can choose archetypes like the Myers-Briggs types. We could say that Inksy is, let's see, Inksy would be, we'll say she's an INFJ, an advocate. You could put flaws. She is fanciful and flighty. You have their motivations, positive traits and negative traits, just all kinds of information here. And then you can figure out their voice when you get to that part. Things like their vocabulary, their education level, cultural influences, slang they like to use, whether they're direct or rambling, assertive or passive, just lots of stuff. And there's a whole questionnaire that if you want to fill out, you can figure out all kinds of information about your character. I mean, even what are their feet like? That's just, it's so detailed. And their personality, just all kinds of, you see, it just keeps scrolling and scrolling. So if you use this questionnaire, you can really get to know your characters well. And I mean, you can fill in as much or as little information as you want. I mean, you know, even what their past and futures like, their birth, where they're gonna die, things like that. What is the most offensive thing they ever said? Like, you might not use all of this in your story, but you will know your characters really well. And it just keeps going. It's like the Energizer Bunny. It keeps going and going and going and going. This is a good one. The conflict, how they respond to it. What do they do? What's their kryptonite? So you can really get very intimate with your characters and differentiate between them so well by getting to know them like this if you want to. You can see spirituality, values, what their daily life is like, and miscellaneous things. What or who would your character dress up as for Halloween? What's their favorite fairy tale? See, I love this. These are the kind of questions that I wouldn't think to ask about my characters, but it's all here. And just, I love characters, and I love character development, and I love that this is so in-depth. So you have your viewpoint synopsis as well. This you have to come back to after you have your scenes, and I will come back to that and show you. And you also have this whole space to write your character's background, to write out their backstory or whatever background information you want. And then you have notes where you can add links to websites or images or put in your own text. Now up here you can also add images, reference images for your characters. And I'm just going to show you how you do that. Let's see, I saved a picture just for Mrs. Bitsy, or Inksy as she is now known. And she's a cute little black spider here. And so now, when I go out, there's a picture of her as well. So then we'll come back to the planning tab. And the next thing you're going to do is expand your story skeleton to your short synopsis, which is just to take each line from your story skeleton and expand it into a paragraph. So instead of Itsy Bitsy is a garden spider, we take that and now I have Itsy Bitsy and his wife live a life as garden spiders. They aren't happy, but they are content. They have a nice web and enough bugs to eat, but the garden is small. They are newlyweds and are talking about starting a family. So very short, but still a lot more than Itsy Bitsy is a garden spider. And then we go from he's tired of living in the garden where he almost gets stepped on and the people are starting to use pesticides. And from that we have one day while taking a stroll through the garden, Incy discovers a strange smell. He investigates and discovers that the ground is littered with dead bugs. The air around them is toxic with pesticides. He rushes home to Mrs. Bitsy, but he is nearly trampled by the feet of children who are running out to play. He barely manages to escape and makes it back to his web. And you can see this goes on, and they recommend that you try to keep it down to about a page, which is roughly 500 words. So my final word count for all of this was 528 words. So that's really not that bad. So then you're going to go over to the extended synopsis tab here, and you're going to look at your short synopsis and really start expanding it and adding more structure to the story. You're not doing a whole lot of detail because you're not writing the whole story yet, and you're not going detailed into your scenes. But you are going to be kind of getting an idea of what your scenes are going to be like. And that's where you put, between each scene, you're going to put a paragraph for when you go into your scene synopsis, which you'll see in just a minute. Now, I did not expand my whole synopsis because this is just an example, but you can see that I have added a lot more because I only went to the part where they were just getting inside the water spout, and I'm already at 635 words. I went from my first short paragraph that I showed you earlier. I have expanded Itsy Bitsy, a garden spider, loves life in the garden. He has plenty of bugs to eat, a nice web, and a lovely new spider wife. They are content in their quiet garden and have recently started talking about starting a family. They are having one such discussion now, and Incy, his wife, mentions again that she wants to move. Her mother told her stories about a paradise beyond the waterspout. Itsy wants to stay in their safe garden, however, and they argue. After exchanging heated words, Itsy storms away from the web and goes for a walk to clear his head. And then the next scene goes, after some time, Itsy is feeling calmer. He reflects on his love for the garden and what a nice home it has been. He is content here, though he understands that Itsy wants more for their children, but he just wants them to be safe. His thoughts are interrupted when he realizes he is smelling something strange and unpleasant. He follows the scent to investigate, but stops dead in his tracks when he sees the ground ahead of him is littered with dead bugs. He is choking on the toxic air and hurries away. So then you just keep going and expand each paragraph from your short synopsis into something extended for your extended synopsis. Then you're going to go over to the Scenes tab. And this is where you really get to have fun. I'm going to move this down so you can see. You can add scenes and add plot points. But the first thing you're going to want to do here is generate scenes. And this takes all of your paragraphs and makes them into scenes. Now, there's a lot of extra stuff you can play with here that I haven't really worked with yet. Not really in depth. So it says the scene generator will help you automatically turn your extended synopsis into discrete scenes which you can then do all kinds of wonderful things with, such as work out your goal to decision cycle, shuffle around, write drafts, and add characters and locations. So then you're going to look at the list that it's got of your scenes and identify if each line is the beginning of the new scene or just a continuation of the previous scene. If it's not a new scene, then uncheck the box and the text will be included as part of the line above. Also, if you're feeling confident, you can try to mark the scenes as heads or tails, but don't get too worried about this at this stage. You'll have plenty of time to shift scenes around and to find what type of scene they are after they've been generated. So it will tell you a lot more about this if you decide to use these, which I do not. So I'm not really going to get into head scenes and tail scenes and all of that in this video because that's not something that I've been using right now. So I deliberately kept each paragraph as its own scene, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And now I have my scenes. Really, this part, if you follow theirs, you see they're going to want you to do the goal to decision cycle and all kinds of stuff like that. But like I said many times, I don't follow their plan. I have modified it for myself. So what I do next is my locations. And, you know, we have the web, which is a spider's web, and you can make notes about the 5 senses to really get concrete details about your scenes in these locations. And you have the garden, it's a flower garden next to a yellow house, and you can see I have done an example for you here of sights. You would see green stems, colorful flowers, and grass. You could hear the wind or the insects, and you would smell the flowers, the dirt. After the storm, you would have that petrichor smell of wet earth. And in that one scene, there are the noxious fumes from the pesticides. Lots of really helpful information in there if you want to use it. So now I'm going to go back to the scenes. And I'm going to show you, click on the magnifying glass here, and you can really get into your details with the scenes. So here's your details about whether it's a head scene or a tail scene or an incident, and you click the question mark and it'll go into this goal to decision cycle and head scenes and tail scenes for you if you want to use that, which it can be really helpful. It didn't really work for me when I was plotting Asylum, but I can see where it might be helpful for me to use in the future. So you have your synopsis here, and you can mark your point of view character, who is Itzy. You can give it a title, so we can have Itzy and Itzy fight, so that I know what scene this is. Is this the beginning of a chapter? Then you can put the chapter head if you want to give it a title. Or you can see here it says prologue, or we can call it chapter 1, which this would be a short story. It's not really going to have chapters, but we could call it part 1. And then you can go in here, and this is where your character viewpoints are going to come in that I was talking about earlier. So we have Itzy and Itzy are both in this scene. So now that I have that, and we can also add the locations. This takes place at the web. So now that I have that, I can show you over here in characters. Now is when you have the viewpoint synopsis. So you have where Itzy and Itzy fight. And this section is where you're going to go through and write a synopsis of the story from the point of view of each of your major characters. That is, if you decide to use this part. So that can be really helpful because even though your character, your point of view character, is where you're seeing the story from, every character is still experiencing this story, and it's going to affect how they react to everything, how they react to your character. What has Itzy been doing while Itzy was out in the garden going for a walk? Maybe she was sitting there brooding about their fight, so she's going to be really angry still when he comes back. And she's not going to be inclined to be feeling very sympathetic towards what happened to him in the garden. That is a really helpful tool that you can use. Now, back in the scenes, this is the thing that has absolutely helped me the most with my writing: the scene blocking. So it brings up this whole document here, and you can paste the content from the synopsis. So sometimes that's all I have for my scene blocking, and it's still been really helpful. Or you can take this and expand it and really get into the details of how your scene is going to work. It's like, I don't know how many of you have much experience or knowledge about theater, but when you're acting in the theater, they're going to be blocking the scenes before you really start rehearsals. Like in your very initial early days, this character is going to stand here, and then they're going to do this and move here, and they're going to take this, and then they're going to talk about this thing. So, you might expand this, and so the scene's going to open on Itsy and Itsy are having dinner. A delicious fly they caught in their web. Itsy remarks that the flies have been plentiful this year, and Itsy agrees. As they are finishing their meal, Itsy asks Itsy if he's thought more about having children. He says yes, and he likes the idea. And you can see I don't really worry too much about typos and things like that in my scene blocking, because my scene blocking is what I'm going to take and expand into the first draft. And as you can see, you can draft your novel here in Novel Factory. And again, you have a section for notes. Then you do your first draft, second draft, final draft, and so on. But once I've finished all my scene blocking, I am done with using Novel Factory. And you can go up here and you can actually export it to Scrivener. And I will show you why I like to do that. So you create a save file for it, export complete. So now that I have this open in Scrivener, I can show you why it is that I prefer to do my drafts in Scrivener. And it's honestly because of the screen split function. So that I can go here and you can see where my scene blocking is right here. And then you have your first draft section, which is where, right there. So this is where I can have side by side my screen blocking and my page for where I'm drafting, and I can see it as I'm writing. And it really keeps me on track and keeps me from getting stuck, and it's done so much to help me with my writer's block problems and things like that. It's a lot easier to make yourself sit and write the scene when you already have the scene all mapped out. Or at least it is in my experience. And Novel Factory doesn't really have that option to have them side by side. You can paste your scene blocking into it and expand it from there if you'd like to. But it really doesn't. I mean, I do like that you can go over here, you can see the characters that are going to be in here, and you can see the locations. And you can't really do that in Scrivener, But for me, it's a lot more helpful to have my scene blocking and my draft side by side. I mean, you can have your scene summary, but that's not really the same thing as your scene blocking, and just not quite as helpful. Okay, so that's how I do it. I hope that this video was helpful for you, and you can let me know in the comments below what video you would like to see next time, or you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. See you next time.